A successful woman, admired by her community, lost everything overnight. Why? She put her trust in the wrong person, a so-called pastor who promised to save her but brought her nothing but ruin. This isn't just a story about being deceived. It's about bouncing back, rising from nothing, and taking back control and pride. By the end of this story, you'll see how one woman's comeback inspired an entire region. Stick around. This is a story you won't forget. Adaora wasn't just doing well. She was a star. Her clothing business, Adaora's Creations, was the heart of Onitsha's busy market. The streets around her store were always alive. Street vendors shouting about their goods, the smell of roasted plantains mixing with the scent of fresh fabric, and customers bargaining loudly. Inside her shop, racks of her unique designs filled the walls, drawing customers from far and wide. Adaora had it all: a happy husband, 2 lovely kids, and a thriving business. Her laugh was contagious, and her kind nature made everyone love her. She was generous, often helping pay school fees for struggling families or donating clothes to those in need. But Adaora had one vulnerability: her deep faith. She believed her success wasn't just from hard work, but also a blessing from God. Her office walls were covered with motivational quotes and Bible verses in frames. Every morning she prayed, thanking God for her blessings and asking for guidance. She never missed church and gave freely to anyone who claimed to be doing God's work. One Sunday, after a powerful sermon about faith and sacrifice, a guest preacher named Prophet Ezekiel approached her outside the church. She was chatting with others near her car when he walked up. He was tall and commanding, his white robe bright in the sunlight. His deep voice had a serious but soothing tone. "Sister Adaora," he said, his voice calm yet intense. "The Lord has a message for you." Adaora froze, her heart beating faster. "A message?" she asked, curious but slightly uneasy. "Yes," Ezekiel said, stepping closer. "Your enemies want to ruin you, but don't be afraid. My prayers will protect you." His intense gaze seemed to pierce her, and Adaora felt a chill. How could he know about the restless nights she'd been having, the vague worries that had kept her up? "How?" she began, but he raised a hand to stop her gently. "The Lord shows me what must be revealed," he said, "and he has chosen you for something greater." Adaora's mind raced. She took this as a sign, divine guidance just when she needed it most. As she drove home, his words played over and over in her mind, blending with the noise of the car engine. That evening, she told her husband, Christopher, about the encounter. "Are you sure about this guy?" Christopher asked, frowning as they sat in their cozy living room. The warm light of the lamp made his concern even clearer. "You know, some people use religion to trick others." Adaora shook her head firmly. "He knew things about me, Christopher. Things I've never shared with anyone. I believe he's the real deal." Her voice was steady, but Christopher's eyes showed doubt. "Just be careful," he said softly, holding her hand. She nodded, but her thoughts were already elsewhere, focused on the prophet's message. In the following weeks, Prophet Ezekiel's influence grew. He came to her shop, praying for her staff and bringing a calm energy to the place. Customers noticed Adaora seemed sharper, more motivated, but beneath the surface, she was changing. Ezekiel's advice was simple but firm. Plant seeds of faith, and God will bless you even more. His words carried a persuasive weight, almost as if they were God's own. At first, Adaora gave small amounts, hesitant but comforted by Ezekiel's confidence. "One day," Ezekiel said, while sitting in her office, watching as she nervously twisted a pen. Faith means trusting God's promises, even when they seem impossible. Give generously, and He will reward you many times over. Ada Ora nodded slowly, torn between belief and doubt. I trust Him, she said softly, more to herself than to him. She handed over a small envelope. It wasn't much, but it felt meaningful. Over time, his requests grew bolder. The Lord asks for a great sacrifice, he told her one day, his voice heavy with seriousness. They were in her living room, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above them. Your devotion must be complete. Give all you have and He will repay it beyond your dreams. Christopher sat stiffly in the corner, arms crossed and face set in a hard expression. This is crazy, Ada Ora, he said, his voice steady but filled with frustration. We've worked too hard for this. You're risking everything we've built. You don't get it, Ada Ora shot back, her voice defensive. This is about faith, not just us. She avoided his intense stare, her eyes fixed on the pastor's calm, serious face. This isn't faith, it's stupidity, Christopher said, his voice rising. He's taking advantage of you. Ezekiel stayed calm, his hands folded as if in prayer. Brother Christopher, he said smoothly, doubt is the enemy of faith. Trust in God's plan and you will see His miracles. The room felt heavy with tension. Ada Ora bit her lip, caught between her husband's warnings and Ezekiel's compelling words. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling but firm. I have to do this. It started with her savings, but it didn't stop there. Christopher's objections grew louder as Ada Ora sold her jewelry and even their family car. This isn't right, Ada Ora, he pleaded one night, his fists clenched in frustration. We're losing everything. I'm doing this for our future, she said, though doubt lingered in her voice. The warmth of their living room felt gone, replaced by a cold tension that filled the space. Ezekiel wasn't finished. One day, he came to her shop, walking slowly among the colorful racks of fabric. Your business must also be surrendered to the Lord, he declared, his voice echoing in the quiet store. Sell it and watch God's miracles unfold. Ada Ora froze, her breath catching. Her shop was everything, her life's work, her family's foundation. The business? She asked, barely able to say the words. Yes, Ezekiel said, his gaze steady. Do not hesitate, Sister Ada Ora. Obedience brings blessings. Against all logic, she did as he said. The process was heartbreaking. Signing the paperwork, shutting the doors for the last time, and handing every penny to Ezekiel. This is God's will, she repeated to herself, trying to silence her doubts. When she got home to find Christopher packing his bags, her heart broke. I can't stay and watch this happen, he said, his voice heavy with pain. He gathered their children, who glanced back at her with tearful faces as they left. You're tearing this family apart, Ada Ora. She stood frozen in the doorway, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Days later, the truth hit her. Her bank accounts were drained, her home was foreclosed, and her reputation was shattered. When she tried calling Ezekiel, the number was disconnected. The pastor had vanished, leaving her life in ruins. Her once bright world fell apart like a stack of cards. Ada Ora found herself in a rundown apartment, its peeling paint and leaking roof a stark reminder of how far she'd fallen. The creaking floorboards seemed to echo the burden of her despair. She relied on friends for food, swallowing her pride with every handout. The streets she once walked with confidence now felt hostile, filled with whispers and pitying stares. Months passed and despair took root. The days blurred together, her sharp mind dulled by the weight of failure. One cold, silent night, as she sat alone by a flickering candle, her phone buzzed. She stared at it, hesitating before picking it up with trembling hands. The message was from an old employee. Madam Ada Ora, we miss you. We still believe in you. She read the words again and again, tears filling her eyes. They felt like a rope thrown to her in a sea of hopelessness. She clutched the phone tightly, her chest tightening with a mix of pain and gratitude. For the first time in months, she felt a spark, a faint reminder of the woman she used to be. I I still have my skills, she whispered to herself. My creativity, my determination. They can take everything else, but they can't take that. That night, she sat at her small, battered table, her mind racing. The hum of distant traffic outside mixed with the steady drip of a leaky faucet. With a pen and a scrap of paper, she began jotting down ideas. Each word felt like a small flame reigniting inside her, burning away the doubt and regret. After enduring so much pain that she almost gave up on life, Adaora found herself at a turning point. The weight of everything she had lost had nearly broken her, leaving her wondering if it was even worth trying to keep going. But in that darkest moment, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic or sudden, just a quiet, steady determination. She realized it was time to start fresh. This wasn't about proving anything to anyone else. It was about taking back her life for herself, one step at a time. The road ahead was uncertain, full of challenges she couldn't yet predict. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't overwhelming or flashy, but it was enough. A small, steady flame reminding her that as long as she kept moving, no matter how slowly, she could rebuild. She made herself a promise. She wouldn't give up. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about creating a better life, one she would build with her own hands, no matter how hard it might be. Adaora started over from scratch. Her small apartment barely had room for the old sewing machine a friend had loaned her. The walls were dull and scratched, but she didn't care. She cleared a corner of the tiny living room, moved a wobbly chair out of the way, and got to work. With fabric scraps donated by friends, she began sewing. The steady hum of the sewing machine brought her a sense of calm in the quiet room. Her first customers were friends, people who still believed in her talent. One evening, her childhood friend Ruth came by with a bundle of fabric. "Adaora, I need something special for my sister's wedding," she said with a warm smile. Adaora hesitated, holding the fabric. "You really think I can do this?" she asked, her voice shaky. Ruth chuckled. "Of course, you've always been the best. No one else can create something as beautiful as you." That simple encouragement lit a spark inside her. "All right," Adaora said, her hands already running over the fabric as she pictured the design in her mind. "I'll make it perfect." Word spread fast. Ruth's dress turned out stunning, and soon more friends came knocking. "Adaora, can you make me something like that?" one asked, holding up a picture of Ruth's dress. Another customer said, "Your designs are even better now." Each compliment chipped away at her self-doubt, filling her life with vibrant colors, just like the fabrics she worked with. At night, when her sewing machine was silent, Adaora would sit under the dim glow of her lamp, thinking about how far she had come. She began sharing her story online, warning others about fake profits. In one video, she said, "They took everything from me, but they didn't take my determination." Her raw honesty resonated with people, and her social media following started to grow. One day, as sunlight poured through her small window, Adaora set up her phone and recorded herself sewing a dress. She spoke openly about her struggles and her journey to start over. "I lost everything," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "But I found myself, and that's something no one can ever take away." The video went viral. Messages of support filled her inbox, and orders started coming in from all over the country. Every new order felt like another step toward rebuilding her life. Investors noticed her growing influence and reached out with offers to help expand her business. Adaora was careful, choosing only those who shared her vision. Within a year, Adaora relaunched Adaora's Creations. But this time, it wasn't just a business. It was a symbol of hope. Her new workshop was alive with activity. The hum of sewing machines and the sound of laughter filled the air. She made it a point to hire women who had been through struggles like hers, giving them a chance to rebuild their lives too. One day, as she walked through the workshop, an employee held up a nearly finished dress. "Madam Ada Ora, what do you think?" she asked, her face eager. Ada Ora smiled, pride swelling in her chest. "It's beautiful," she said. "You're doing an amazing job." Ada Ora continued sharing her journey online, now reaching a much larger audience. In one live stream, she said, "Let's learn from my mistakes. Trust your gut and don't let anyone make you feel worthless." Her story inspired many, showing them that even in the darkest moments, it's possible to rise again. But Ada Ora wasn't just focused on rebuilding her life. She was determined to bring Prophet Ezekiel to justice. It wasn't just about her anymore. Every time she heard about another victim, her resolve grew stronger. She knew she had the voice and platform to expose his lies and stop him from ruining more lives. One humid evening in Lagos, she sat in a cramped office with Nkechi, a private investigator who had uncovered Ezekiel's scams. The room smelled faintly of old paper and coffee, and the flickering fluorescent light cast shadows on the walls. Nkechi placed a thick folder on the desk between them. "This," Nkechi said, tapping the folder, "is everything we've got. Bank records, witness testimonies, and even photos of him meeting with other victims." Ada Ora picked up the folder, her hands shaking slightly as she flipped through the papers. Every page revealed stories of greed, lies, and heartbreak. She stopped at a photo of Prophet Ezekiel, smiling as he shook hands with a man outside an expensive hotel. "How does someone like this sleep at night?" she muttered, her voice full of anger. Nkechi leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "People like him don't think about the damage they cause. They think they're untouchable." Ada Ora tightened her jaw. "Not anymore," she said firmly. "I'll make sure he pays for everything he's done." The next step was to reach out to journalists. Ada Ora met a group of reporters at a small cafe tucked away in the city. The air was tense as they went over the evidence Nkechi had gathered. "This is big," one reporter said, excitement in his voice. "If we publish this, it won't just expose Ezekiel, it'll bring down his entire operation." Ada Ora nodded. "But we have to be careful. He's a master manipulator. He'll try to make us look like liars." The lead journalist, a woman named Ifioma, looked Ada Ora in the eye. "We'll handle that. You've already done the hardest part, standing up to him. Let us take it from here." The investigation led to a groundbreaking news story. The article, "The Pastor Who Preyed on Faith," made headlines everywhere. It uncovered Ezekiel's years of scams, the lives he destroyed, and the people who helped him get away with it. The public was outraged. Victims from all over came forward to share their own stories, adding even more pressure. Law enforcement had no choice but to act quickly. On the day of Ezekiel's arrest, Ada Ora stood outside the courthouse, her heart racing. Police officers led him out in handcuffs. The man who once seemed so confident now looked small and beaten. As their eyes met, Ada Ora felt a wave of relief. For a moment, his expression flickered with anger, or maybe fear. But she stood tall, her face calm. "This is for everyone you hurt," she thought. When reporters swarmed her for a statement, she spoke clearly and firmly. "This isn't just about me," she said. "This is about justice. It's about protecting others from people like him." But Ada Ora's story didn't stop there. What she went through gave her a new purpose. She started the Resilience Foundation, an organization that helps people who have been scammed and supports women trying to rebuild their lives. The foundation became a source of hope. Its workshops taught people how to spot fraud and manage their finances. It also pushed for stricter rules for religious organizations. Ada Ora's hard work didn't go unnoticed. Her name became a symbol of strength and perseverance. She was invited to speak at events where her story inspired people across the continent. At one event in Abuja, Ada Ora stood on stage in front of a packed crowd. Her voice was steady as she spoke. "I was betrayed," she said. "But betrayal doesn't define us. We can choose to get back up, rebuild, and fight for what's right, not just for ourselves, but for others too." The audience erupted in applause, many standing to cheer her on. Ada Ora smiled, her heart full of gratitude. Her comeback wasn't just about rebuilding her life, it was about leaving a lasting impact. Her fashion business, rebuilt from scratch, now showcased its designs on runways across Africa. Each piece told a story of strength and beauty, just like hers. Years later, Ada Ora stood in the lobby of her foundation's new headquarters, a modern building in the heart of Lagos. The walls were covered with photos of women she had helped, their smiles a constant reminder of why she kept going. A young girl walked up to her, holding a book titled Rising from the Ashes. "Madam Ada Ora," the girl said shyly, "your story saved my family. Thank you." Ada Ora crouched to meet the girl's eyes. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Never let anyone make you feel powerless," she said. "You're stronger than you know." As the girl smiled and walked away, Ada Ora looked at a plaque on the wall. It read, "Built from the ruins of betrayal, Ada Ora's journey showed that even in the darkest times, you can rise again." She turned her pain into a story of strength, proving that no setback is permanent. So the next time life knocks you down, remember Ada Ora, the woman who lost everything but came back stronger than ever.